When she left me for the smug HOA president, I watched my life crumble. My daughter cried herself to sleep while they flaunted their perfect McMansion existence on social media. At my lowest point, something inside me snapped. I bought the cheapest house in their pristine cul-de-sac and unleashed my revenge one meticulously placed garden gnome at a time. They thought I was weak, but I became their worst nightmare hiding behind a rulebook. Standing in the pouring rain, I stare at the "for" sale sign being hammered into Chad's perfectly manicured lawn. Around me, 15 garishly colored gnomes are arranged in a victory formation, their eerie smiles reflecting the flashing police lights. Chad is being escorted from his McMansion in handcuffs, screaming about those damn gnomes, while neighbors film everything on their phones. Tiffany watches from her BMW, mascara streaming down her face as I calmly sign the final HOA violation notice that officially strips Chad of his presidency. I remember when I thought we were happy. 3 months earlier, I returned home early, on our 10th anniversary with flowers. The house was quiet except for the sound of zippers and clasps. I followed the noise to our bedroom where Tiffany was packing her designer suitcases. "Frank," she said without looking up, "I'm leaving you for Chad Whitaker. He lives in Serenity Estates. You've met him at the neighborhood barbecue." I stood frozen, flowers hanging limply at my side. "Leaving? But today is our anniversary." "Don't act surprised," Tiffany continued, folding her cashmere sweaters. "We both know this marriage has been holding me back." I thought about our daughter sleeping at her friend's house, blissfully unaware her world was about to shatter. What about Lily? The custody discussion proved even more devastating. Tiffany casually explained she didn't want primary custody, didn't even want weekend visits initially. "I need a fresh start, Frank. No baggage." No baggage. That's what our 7-year-old daughter was to her. I never thought hatred could feel so cold. Later that night, I watched Lily sleeping, clutching the Mother's Day card she'd made but never got to give. How would I explain this? What words could soften the blow that her mother had chosen a man she barely knew over her own child? Within days, Tiffany's transformation appeared on social media. Hair highlighted, wardrobe upgraded, posing in front of Chad's mansion with captions about finally living my truth and upgrading my life. Each post was a dagger, not for what it did to me, but for how it affected Lily, who still checked her mother's profile daily. Every night I fielded the same heartbreaking questions. Why doesn't Mommy answer my calls? And is it because our house is too small? I tried to shield Lily from the worst of it. I told her Mommy was busy settling into her new home. That she still loved her. But children sense lies, even kind ones. Looking back, I should have seen the breaking point coming. The science fair should have been Lily's triumph. Her volcano project had won first place, and even through her grief, she beamed with pride. I spotted Tiffany and Chad across the gymnasium, matching cream outfits and artificial smiles, not even looking at Lily's display. "Mommy came." Lily tugged my hand, pulling me toward them before I could object. Tiffany barely acknowledged her daughter before Chad stepped forward, extending his hand with practiced condescension. "Frank," he smirked, "how's that charming little bungalow holding up?" I felt Lily stiffen beside me. "We're doing fine," I replied, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. Chad reached into his tailored jacket, pulling out a thick binder. "A courtesy copy of our community guidelines. Perhaps you'll learn something about standards." His smile never reached his eyes. I wanted to throw the binder back in his smug face, but Lily was watching. I took it silently. "Chad just wants to help you improve." Tiffany laughed, touching Chad's arm possessively. She glanced at Lily's volcano. "Oh, is this yours? How creative." Chad's son won the regional science competition last year. I felt my daughter deflate beside me. "I won first place today," Lily said quietly. "That's nice, honey. We need to circulate. Chad's on the school board now." Tiffany turned away without even a hug. That night, as I held Lily while she cried herself to sleep, something changed inside me. The grief remained, but alongside it grew something cold and precise. After tucking Lily in, I reached for Chad's rulebook and began to read. Page by methodical page, I absorbed every bylaw, every restriction, every petty rule that governed the precious community of Serenity Estates. By 4 a.m., I was surrounded by notes, highlighting contradictions, ambiguities, and loopholes. "Daddy, why are you still awake?" Lily found me at the kitchen table, bleary-eyed but oddly energized. I looked up, a strange smile forming. "I'm just learning about standards, sweetheart." The next morning, I called in sick to work and began searching real estate listings. That's when I found it. A tiny, dilapidated cottage on the very edge of Serenity Estates, technically within HOA jurisdiction but long neglected. The perfect beachhead for my campaign. I never considered myself a vengeful man before that moment. "We'll take it," I told the realtor later that day, using my entire savings. "Sir," she said nervously, "you should know this property has been unsold for years because of its challenging location." "It's perfect," I replied, signing the papers without hesitation. That night, I sat Lily down for an honest conversation. "We're moving closer to Mom's new place. Will she visit more?" Lily asked hopefully. I hesitated, torn between protecting my daughter and feeding false hope. "I don't think so, sweetheart. But I need you to understand something important. What happened isn't because we weren't good enough. Then why did she leave? Some people chase what they think is perfect instead of seeing the perfect things they already have." I pulled out a notepad. "Now, how would you feel about helping me pick out some garden gnomes?" Lily looked confused but intrigued. "Gnomes? Why gnomes?" I smiled. "Because sometimes revenge wears a pointy hat." The plan crystallized with military precision. I created spreadsheets cataloging every bylaw, every loophole, every ambiguously worded clause in the 200-page HOA Bible. I studied previous HOA decisions, complaints, and enforcement patterns. I photographed every violation in Serenity Estates, particularly those on Chad and Tiffany's property, no matter how minor. Most importantly, I found the perfect rule. No more than 15 decorative lawn ornaments under 18 inches in height. Nothing about color. Nothing about arrangement, nothing about appearance. I never knew I had this capacity for meticulous malice. I ordered exactly 15 of the most grotesque garden gnomes available online. Zombie gnomes, disco gnomes, anatomically inappropriate gnomes, each selected with Lily's gleeful input. "This is like picking a team," she giggled, pointing at a gnome mooning passers-by. "Exactly," I smiled. "And we're playing to win." As we packed our modest belongings, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The man looking back was someone new, someone with purpose, someone who had been underestimated for the last time. I may have lost my wife, but I was about to gain something far more valuable. Justice served cold, one garden gnome at a time. The day we moved in, I precisely arranged the 15 gnomes in a semicircle facing Chad and Tiffany's house. Their expressions, leering, grimacing, winking, seemed directed specifically at the McMansion's master bedroom window. I became an artist of malicious compliance. Chad's first warning notice arrived 2 days later, left in our mailbox rather than mailed officially. "All lawn ornaments must maintain community aesthetic standards," it read in Chad's pompous handwriting. I spent that night crafting a 12-page response. I cited the specific language of the rules, including precedent, from 3 previous HOA decisions I discovered in the meeting minutes archive. I concluded with a request for clarification on the official definition of aesthetic standards and demanded all future communications follow the HOA's documented notification procedures. "Daddy, why are you smiling like that?" Lily asked as I sealed the envelope. "Because sometimes," I told her, "the best revenge isn't breaking rules. It's following them better than anyone else." I'd spent my life being reasonable. That man was gone. The wind chime collection went up next. I installed dozens of tiny, technically harmonious chimes that created a maddening symphony with the slightest breeze. Using a precise mapping of sound trajectories and neighborhood wind patterns, I ensured the maximum resonance would hit Chad and Tiffany's bedroom. "Why is Mommy looking so tired on Instagram?" Lily asked innocently one morning, scrolling through Tiffany's increasingly haggard-looking selfies. "Maybe she's not sleeping well," I replied, carefully hanging another chime. The dark circles under Tiffany's eyes in her latest post suggested my acoustic warfare was working perfectly. I never knew I could enjoy someone else's discomfort so much. The holiday decorations phase began with a flourish. I discovered the rules allowed holiday decorations for a period not exceeding 60 days. Nothing specified which holidays qualified. "What's National Kazoo Appreciation Month?" Lily asked, helping me unbox a giant inflatable kazoo-playing Santa. "It's the first of many special celebrations," I explained as we secured it to our roof, positioned for maximum visibility from Chad's home office. I registered each obscure holiday with the HOA calendar committee, providing detailed documentation proving their legitimacy. Accordion Awareness Month, International Talk Like a Pirate Day, World Penguin Day, each with its own garish decorations rotated precisely every 59 days. My daughter became my enthusiastic accomplice. At the mandatory neighborhood barbecue, I appeared in clothing technically, meeting all dress code requirements. Clean, pressed, proper length. But in clashing patterns and colors that made several residents wince, I circulated methodically, introducing myself to everyone with perfect politeness while my outfit assaulted their senses. "Your ex seems different," I overheard one neighbor whisper to Tiffany, who watched me with growing unease. "I don't know what he's doing," she muttered. "This isn't like him at all." She was right. The old Frank wouldn't have fought back. By month 3, I had become Serenity Estate's most dedicated citizen. I attended every HOA meeting armed with meticulously prepared talking points and parliamentary procedure knowledge that allowed me to extend meetings for hours with technically valid inquiries. "Point of order, Mr. President," became my catchphrase each time, causing Chad's jaw to tighten further. I studied the rule book with religious devotion. Every ambiguity became a weapon, every contradiction ammunition. I filed requests for clarification that required written responses. I submitted proposals that needed to be formally addressed. I challenged interpretations that demanded legal review. Looking back, I realize I was becoming obsessed. My anonymous tip campaign proved devastatingly effective. Using different burner phones, I reported Chad, Tiffany, and their friends for infractions I documented during my health walks with a telephoto lens. Chad's garbage cans left out 6 minutes past regulation time. Tiffany's unauthorized wind spinner, their friend's non-regulation mailbox post. "Why does Mr. Chad look so angry all the time now?" Lily asked after waving to him and receiving a glare in return. "Some people don't like when rules apply to them too," I explained, helping her rearrange our flamingos, one fluorescent green, one neon orange, into another suggestive pose near the property line. The rules stated, artificial flamingos are limited to 2 per household. Nothing about color, nothing about positioning. I never realized how satisfying it would be to watch someone powerful coming undone. The artistic expression installation pushed Chad closer to the edge. Using the HOA's own clause about encouraging artistic expression, I created a towering sculpture from old tires painted in officially approved colors, positioned to cast a shadow directly on Chad's prized rose garden. "It represents the crushing weight of conformity," I explained earnestly at the HOA art appreciation event I had proposed and organized. Several neighbors nodded thoughtfully. A few even praised my bold statement. Chad stood in the back, grinding his teeth audibly. I had begun to gain allies. When Chad attempted to amend the bylaws, I mobilized. I'd spent months building relationships with neighbors tired of Chad's tyranny, particularly elderly residents who'd faced selective enforcement. At the amendment vote, my coalition blocked the changes, citing precedent and procedure with devastating precision. "It's humiliating," I overheard Tiffany hiss at Chad after the meeting. "You promised you could handle this." "He's not breaking any rules." Chad's voice cracked, his perfect composure finally slipping. I can't throw him out for following the rules too well. The first crack in their relationship formed that night, visible to everyone who attended the emergency HOA meeting, where Chad failed to gain support for his Frank Claus amendments. I never thought revenge could taste so sweet. One evening, I overheard their argument through my strategically placed bird feeder with its small recording device. Not technically surveillance since it was on my property, recording ambient sounds for my nature appreciation journal. "They're driving me insane," Chad was screaming at the gnomes visible from their kitchen window. "I can't sleep. I can't focus. I'm getting complaints from the board about my own violations now." Tiffany's response was ice cold. "Figure it out. I didn't leave Frank for someone who can't handle a few lawn ornaments." I smiled in the darkness. The strategy was working perfectly. 4 months in, I initiated the community outreach phase. I volunteered for committees, I organized a neighborhood watch, I started a garden club. With each activity, I built a network of supporters, many of whom had their own grievances against Chad's leadership. Mrs. Abernathy, who had been fined for her excessive rose bushes. Mr. Gonzalez, whose request for a wheelchair ramp had been denied for aesthetic reasons. The Patels, whose traditional Diwali decorations had been deemed too colorful. I became their champion, helping them navigate the bureaucracy Chad had created. With each small victory, my influence grew. "Dad, people actually like us now," Lily observed after several neighbors waved when we walked to the bus stop. "They're starting to see the truth," I replied, waving back. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to show what's been wrong all along." I never expected to become a community leader. The turning point came at the mid-year HOA meeting. Chad had proposed another rule change clearly targeted at my activities. As he spoke, I noticed the fatigue in his voice, the slight tremor in his hand. "The question," I said when it was my turn to speak, "is whether our community values uniformity over humanity. Are we truly enhancing property values by punishing creativity and individuality? Or are we creating a sterile environment where people fear their neighbors more than they connect with them?" The room fell silent. Even Chad seemed momentarily stunned by the shift in tone. Then Mrs. Abernathy stood up. "I've lived here for 20 years and I've never felt I belonged until Frank started his garden club. For the first time, I feel part of something, not just afraid of getting another fine." Others joined in. The narrative was changing. As the meeting ended with Chad's proposal defeated, I caught Tiffany watching me. Not with anger, but with something more disturbing. Interest. She approached as I gathered my notes. "You've changed," she said, her voice lower, softer than usual. "People do that," I replied coldly, turning away. "Maybe we should talk sometime," she suggested, touching my arm. "For Lily's sake." I looked at her perfectly manicured hand on my sleeve, then directly into her eyes. "I'm busy planning our National Typography Appreciation Month display. The fonts will be especially hideous." I walked away without looking back, feeling stronger with every step. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy, but my campaign was proceeding better than I dared hope. Chad was unraveling. Tiffany was reconsidering her choices. The community was shifting allegiance, and I was just getting started. 6 months into my campaign, the cracks in Chad and Tiffany's relationship were widening daily. My gnome army had expanded to include seasonal themes. My Take Your Gnome to Work Day display featured tiny businessmen with briefcases arranged for their morning commute. I never imagined psychological warfare could be so creative. Chad's appearance was deteriorating noticeably. His perfect hair now often disheveled, his designer shirts occasionally mismatched. At the last HOA meeting, he had shown up 5 minutes late, a transgression he had once fined 3 homeowners for. "Mr. President seems stressed," Mrs. Abernathy commented as we tended our community garden, another initiative I had started to build my coalition. "Leadership is difficult," I replied neutrally, though inside I was celebrating. My community garden had become the heart of my strategy. Located on a small plot of common land, it brought together the elderly residents, young families, and everyone who had felt marginalized under Chad's regime. We grew vegetables, flowers, and most importantly, relationships. alliances that would prove crucial in the battles to come. Tiffany had tried reaching out again, suggesting coffee to discuss Lily. I declined politely but firmly. Every communication now went through my lawyer, a close friend who was enjoying our correspondence almost as much as I was. Daddy, Mommy, asked if I wanted to stay overnight at her house this weekend. Lily told me one evening as we painted our newest gnome edition, a zombie wearing a tutu. Do you want to? I asked carefully, watching her expression. Looking back, I was most proud of how I handled these moments. Not really, Lily admitted. Her house has too many rules. Chad got mad last time because I used the guest towels. You can always say no, I assured her, and you can always call me to come get you. Our relationship had grown stronger through this ordeal. Lily was more confident, more assertive. She had started expressing her own opinions, even disagreeing with me occasionally. I considered that my greatest victory. The Wind Chime Symphony had been enhanced with a new collection of musical art pieces I installed after discovering a clause in the rules about outdoor musical expression. Small waterproof speakers disguised as rocks played nature sounds at random intervals, programmed to activate primarily between 2 and 4 a.m. I had mastered the art of technically legal torment. My flamingo choreography had evolved to tell ongoing stories. Neighborhood children would visit daily to see what new scenario the fluorescent pair had gotten into. Today, they were attending a tiny wedding ceremony for 2 of the gnomes. He's completely lost control, I overheard a board member tell another at the community pool. The last complaint about Frank's decorations got returned with a 20-page response citing legal precedent. The HOA lawyer says we can't touch him. I pretended not to. Here, focusing on helping Lily with her swimming lesson. But inside I was savoring every word. Some might call it obsession. I called it justice. The Serenity Estates summer block party provided my next opportunity. As a committee member, I had suggested a community talent show. Chad had reluctantly agreed, not realizing my true intention. And now, the MC announced, Lily will perform a song about her special friends. My daughter took the stage confidently, launching into a catchy tune we had composed together about the adventures of our garden gnomes. The children in the audience loved it. Many adults laughed along, but Chad sat frozen, his face reddening, as Lily sang about Mr. Pointy Hat who lives to break the rules. Tiffany wasn't laughing either. She was watching me. I never realized how attractive confidence could be to someone who had only seen you as a doormat. After Lily's performance, Tiffany approached us. That was wonderful, honey, she told Lily with forced cheerfulness. Then to me, can we talk privately for a moment? Anything you need to say can be said in front of our daughter, I replied calmly. Tiffany's smile faltered. I've been thinking about our arrangement. Maybe Lily could stay with me more often. Now that Chad's having trouble at work? I asked, innocently. Her eyes widened slightly. I wasn't supposed to know about the complaints from his colleagues about his increasingly erratic behavior, about the investors who had pulled out of his development project after his public outburst at a city council meeting. I miss my daughter, Tiffany insisted. That's interesting, I replied. She's been in the same place all along. I guided Lily away, feeling Tiffany's stare boring into my back. My daughter had become my moral compass. Is Mommy sad? Lily asked later that night. Mommy is realizing that choices have consequences, I explained. Sometimes people think they can take the good parts of life and leave the hard parts behind. But life doesn't work that way. Like when I didn't want to practice piano but still wanted to play in the recital. Exactly like that, I smiled, amazed by her insight. 7 months in, I launched the next phase, community reform. I proposed a complete overhaul of the HOA rules, positioning it as modernization rather than revolution. My allies on various committees helped draft proposals that would transform Serenity Estates from Chad's beige dictatorship into something more inclusive. I had gone from saboteur to reformer. The annual HOA election was approaching. Chad, as sitting president, would normally run unopposed. But this year Mrs. Abernathy announced her candidacy, with my discreet support. "It's time for new leadership," she declared at her campaign launch in my backyard, standing boldly beside my gnome collection. Leadership that understands community means more than conformity. Chad was livid but powerless to stop her. Any attempt to block her candidacy would only prove her point about his authoritarian tendencies. I never planned to enjoy politics, but power has its advantages. "Have you seen this?" Lily asked one evening, showing me Tiffany's latest Instagram post. The caption read, "Reconsidering what really matters in life. Your new beginnings, your mistakes, your forgiveness." "Interesting timing," I commented, noticing the absence of Chad in her recent photos. 2 days later, the rumors were confirmed. Chad and Tiffany had separated. She had moved into an apartment on the other side of Serenity Estates. "Your strategy is working perfectly," my lawyer friend commented when I told him the news. "But what's your end game here, Frank? Do you want her back?" I thought about Tiffany's betrayal, about Lily crying herself to sleep, about the cold calculation behind Tiffany's decision to upgrade her life at our expense. "This was never about getting her back," I replied. "This is about justice." I realized then I had changed irrevocably. 8 months into my campaign, I received an unexpected visitor. Chad himself standing on my porch at 7 a.m., unshaven and hollow-eyed. "Make it stop," he said simply. "Name your price." I invited him in, carefully removing a gnome figurine from the porch chair so he could sit. Lily was still asleep upstairs. "There's no price," I told him. "This isn't a negotiation." "I'll step down as president," he offered. "I'll move. Just stop with the gnomes and the chimes and the complaints." "The rules allow everything I'm doing," I reminded him. "I thought you respected rules, Chad." His facade cracked completely. "You've ruined my life," he hissed. "My relationship, my standing in the community, my business reputation. All over. A woman who didn't want you anymore." I leaned forward, my voice perfectly calm. "This was never about Tiffany. This was about you thinking you could take my family, mock my home, and face no consequences. This was about you handing me a rule book and telling me to learn about standards. Lesson learned. Chad, I've mastered your rules and now you're losing by them." He left without another word, shoulders slumped in defeat. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The endgame was approaching faster than I'd anticipated. Chad was unraveling publicly, now. At the pre-election town hall, he had actually shouted at an elderly resident who questioned his landscaping decisions. The video had gone viral within the community. Mrs. Abernathy's simple campaign slogan, "Kindness Matters," was appearing on more lawns every day. I never expected to taste victory so soon, but sometimes the universe delivers perfect timing. That night I helped Lily rearrange our gnomes into their most provocative formation yet, a tribunal passing judgment, all facing directly at Chad's house. "Is it over soon, Daddy?" Lily asked as we positioned the final gnome, the judge with his gavel raised. "Almost, sweetheart," I promised. "Justice takes time." I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. 9 months into my campaign of righteous torment, I stood in my yard arranging my latest installation. A modern art sculpture made from old tires painted in HOA-approved colors, positioned to cast a shadow directly on Chad's prized rose garden. I called it Oppression's Shadow. I had become something of a local legend. "Mr. Frank, can I take a picture of your gnomes for my art project?" asked a neighborhood kid who had stopped by on his bike. "Sure thing, Tommy," I replied, adjusting my zombie business gnome's tiny briefcase. "Just make sure you get their good side." My home had become a tourist attraction within Serenity Estates. Children came to see what new scenario my gnomes were enacting. Adults pretended disapproval but secretly enjoyed the disruption of beige monotony. Even real estate agents used my house as a landmark when giving directions. "Turn left at the gnome house, you can't miss it." I never imagined becoming famous for lawn ornaments. Chad, meanwhile, was spiraling. His perfect appearance had deteriorated into something almost unrecognizable. Unshaven, bloodshot eyes, rumpled clothing. At the last HOA meeting, he had arrived visibly sleep-deprived, flinching at every mention of community beautification. "The election is tomorrow," Mrs. Abernathy reminded me as we tended the community garden. "Chad's been going door to door, practically begging for votes." "Democracy at work," I nodded, deadheading a marigold with precise snips. My community garden coalition had grown into a political machine. The elderly residents I had helped navigate HOA bureaucracy. The young families whose children's playground I had championed. The immigrant families whose cultural celebrations I had defended against Chad's uniformity crusade. All ready to vote for change. Tiffany had been trying to rehabilitate her image. She had started volunteering at Lily's school, had posted heartfelt messages about family and priorities on social media, had even approached me after church, suggesting we try again for Lily's sake. Looking back, I marvel at her audacity. "I appreciate the thought," I had replied coolly, "but I'm quite happy with our current arrangement." The hurt and confusion in her eyes was payment for months of Lily's tears. That evening, as Lily and I added seasonal hats to our gnome collection, in preparation for International Hat Appreciation Day, my phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Gonzalez across the street. "Chad is outside staring at your house. Been there 10 minutes. Looks unstable." I glanced out the window. Sure enough, Chad stood at the edge of my property, fists clenched, glaring at my gnome tribunal. "Lily, why don't you go finish your homework?" I suggested calmly. "I need to talk to Mr. Chad." Once she was safely upstairs, I stepped outside. "Can I help you, Chad?" I called pleasantly. His head snapped toward me. "You've turned everyone against me," he snarled. "My neighbors, my colleagues, even Tiffany." "I haven't done anything except follow your precious rules," I reminded him. To the letter. He took a step onto my property. The rules weren't meant to be used like this. "Ah, so rules are just for controlling others, not for being followed. Yourself? Fascinating leadership philosophy. I never enjoyed confrontation before all this. Now I found I had a talent for it." Chad's face contorted with rage. "You smug bastard. You think you've won? The election's tomorrow. When I win again, I'm changing every bylaw. Your gnome army is finished." I smiled thinly. The latest poll shows Mrs. Abernathy leading by 15 points. But democracy can be unpredictable, unlike, say, security cameras. I gestured to the discrete cameras mounted on my eaves. "You're currently trespassing, by the way. Section 8, paragraph 12 of the HOA rules you wrote yourself." Chad looked up, noticed the cameras, and took a step back. "This isn't over," he growled before stalking away. Little did he know how right he was. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with an alert from my security system. Motion detected in the front yard. I checked the live feed and felt a surge of cold satisfaction. There was Chad, wild-eyed and muttering, attacking my tire sculpture with garden shears. "Property, destruction. Section 12, paragraph 7, I whispered to myself, checkmate. I called the non-emergency police line, reporting vandalism in progress. Then I began downloading the security footage to multiple devices. By morning, I had edited a crisp, clear video documenting Chad's transgression. I had waited months for this moment. "What happened to your sculpture, Daddy?" Lily asked at breakfast, noticing the mangled tires visible from our kitchen window. "Someone made a very poor decision last night," I explained. "And now they're going to face consequences. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Election day. The day Serenity Estates would choose its leadership for the next year. The day Chad's reign would end, not just politically, but personally. I never believed in fate until that moment. I requested an emergency HOA meeting before the vote. As a homeowner reporting property destruction, it was my right under the bylaws Chad himself had written. The board had no choice but to comply. The community center was packed. Everyone had heard rumors about some late-night drama at the Gnome House. Chad sat at the center table, attempting to project calm authority despite his bloodshot eyes and rumpled shirt. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "Last night my property was vandalized. Security cameras captured the perpetrator." I connected my laptop to the projector. The room fell silent as crystal-clear footage showed Chad destroying my tire sculpture, his face clearly visible, his actions unmistakable. The HOA bylaws, Section 12, Paragraph 7, state that destruction of another resident's property is grounds for immediate removal from HOA leadership positions. I continued, my voice steady. "I'm not pressing criminal charges at this time. I'm simply asking the board to enforce its own rules." The silence was deafening. Then Mrs. Abernathy spoke up. "The rules must apply to everyone equally," she said firmly. "That's been our campaign's core principle." Board members whispered urgently to each other. Chad sat frozen, his political, career and carefully constructed image disintegrating before his eyes. I watched it all with perfect cold satisfaction. "I move that we vote immediately on Mr. Whitaker's removal," said Mr. Gonzalez, who had been fighting Chad for years over his wheelchair ramp request. The vote was unanimous. Chad was removed as president, effective immediately. He finally exploded. "This is all because of those damn gnomes," he shouted, jumping to his feet. "He's been torturing me for months with those hideous things, the chimes, the flamingos, the Christmas leprechaun still on his roof." St. Patrick's Day Appreciation Month, I corrected mildly, which was properly registered with the events committee. Several people actually laughed. Chad looked around wildly, seeing only hostile or pitying faces. "You're all being manipulated," he insisted desperately. "Ask his ex-wife. Ask Tiffany what he's really like." As if on cue, Tiffany stood up from the back row. "I made a terrible mistake leaving Frank," she announced to the stunned room. "He's a man of integrity who follows through on his commitments, unlike some people." I couldn't have scripted it better myself. Chad stormed out. Mrs. Abernathy was elected president by acclamation, and I declined the nomination to serve as vice president. "I'm not interested in power," I stated, "just in a community where rules apply to everyone equally." Later that day, the for sale sign appeared in front of Chad's McMansion. His business partners had already distanced themselves following his outburst at the city council meeting. Now, with his community standing in tatters, there was nothing left for him in Serenity Estates. That evening, as the rain began to fall, I watched from my window as Chad supervised the sign installation, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Around me, 15 garishly colored gnomes stood in silent judgment, their painted smiles seeming particularly satisfied. My phone buzzed with a text from Tiffany. "Can we talk for real this time about us?" I didn't reply. There was no us to discuss. Lily found me still watching the scene. "Is it over, Daddy?" she asked, sliding her small hand into mine. "Almost," I told her. "Justice takes as long as it takes." I had transformed from victim to victor, from doormat to destroyer. I had used Chad's own rules to dismantle his perfect life, piece by methodical piece. And I regretted nothing. The charges were filed the next morning. Property destruction, trespassing, making threats. The police officers were polite but firm, as they led Chad away from his half-packed McMansion in handcuffs. Neighbors filmed everything on their phones as he screamed about those damn gnomes all the way to the patrol car. I hadn't expected the criminal charges to stick. "The district attorney reviewed your security footage," Officer Reynolds explained. "Given Mr. Whitaker's history of harassment and the clear evidence, they're moving forward with prosecution." I nodded solemnly, playing the role of reluctant accuser perfectly. "I just want this to end peacefully." Chad's mugshot appeared in the local paper the next day. "Former HOA president arrested for vandalism in ongoing neighborhood dispute," read the headline. The article mentioned his erratic behavior at recent community meetings and the ornamental garden gnomes that had apparently triggered his breakdown. I never imagined my revenge would make the news. Tiffany showed up at my door that afternoon, looking perfectly put together but with panic in her eyes. "We need to talk," she insisted. "Chad's been arrested. His career is ruined. Don't you think this has gone far enough? I studied her for a moment. The woman I had once loved, the mother who had abandoned our daughter for a more prestigious life, now crawling back when her upgrade had malfunctioned. How is this my problem? I asked simply. Because you caused it. Her composure cracked. You and those ridiculous gnomes. I maintained perfect calm. I followed every HOA rule to the letter. Chad chose to trespass and destroy property. Those were his choices, not mine. Her eyes narrowed. When did you become so cold? When you called our daughter baggage, I replied, closing the door. I had learned that power isn't about force. It's about control. Chad's preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. His lawyer approached mine about a settlement, dropped the charges in exchange for Chad leaving Serenity Estates permanently and paying for damages. It's a reasonable offer, my lawyer friend advised. Saves everyone the hassle of court. I considered it carefully. What about a restraining order? We can make that part of the agreement. He stays 500 feet away from you and Lily at all times. I accepted the terms. Not out of mercy, but because it accomplished my goals more efficiently. Chad would still be banished, his reputation destroyed. But now he would also be legally bound to stay away from my family. Sometimes victory comes through unexpected channels. The for sale sign in front of Chad's house gained an urgent red price-reduced banner. His real estate agent looked increasingly desperate during showings. The rumor mill churned. Chad's partners had bought him out at a loss. His clients were canceling contracts. His country club membership had been quietly revoked. Tiffany continued her campaign to re-enter our lives. She showed up at Lily's school events, sent thoughtful gifts, called regularly with flimsy excuses to talk. Each time I was polite but distant. Each time the pain in her eyes grew more pronounced. I never realized how addictive power could become. Mrs. Abernathy's leadership transformed Serenity Estates. The more arbitrary rules were repealed. A new emphasis on community involvement replaced the focus on uniformity. My gnome collection became officially recognized as artistic expression and featured in the community newsletter. Your revenge worked better than you planned, Mrs. Gonzalez commented as we worked in the community garden. You've accidentally become a local hero. She wasn't wrong. What had begun as a campaign of personal vengeance had evolved into something larger, a revolution against petty tyranny, a reclaiming of community values. I had become a symbol of resistance against arbitrary power. 1 month after Chad's arrest, his house finally sold. At 30% below market value, according to the neighborhood gossips. The moving trucks came on a Saturday. Chad wasn't present, bound by the restraining, ordered to stay away while I was home. That evening I received an unexpected email from Chad's personal account, not through his lawyer. You've won, it read simply. I hope it was worth it. I deleted it without replying. Victory doesn't require dialogue. Tiffany made her final play the following week. She appeared at my door holding an envelope. These are the divorce papers, she explained, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I've signed everything. The terms are exactly what you asked for. Full custody, child support, everything. I took the envelope, without comment. I made a terrible mistake, Frank, she continued. I thought I wanted status and luxury. I thought Chad could give me a better life. I was wrong. So wrong. I maintained my silence, letting her continue. I miss you. Both of you. Every day. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking anyway. For Lily's sake. For all of us. I studied her carefully. The designer outfit. The perfect makeup now streaked with tears. The practiced vulnerability that had once melted my heart. Is this because your upgrade failed? I asked quietly. Or because you've realized downgrading wasn't so bad after all? Looking back, I'm proud of how I maintained my resolve. That's not fair, she whispered. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. No, I corrected. A mistake is forgetting. An anniversary. A mistake is buying the wrong brand of cereal. What you did was a calculated decision to abandon your family for social advancement. Don't insult us both by calling it a mistake." Her face crumpled. "What can I do to make this right?" "Nothing," I answered honestly. "Some things can't be fixed. They can only be accepted and moved forward from." "I've accepted it. I've moved forward. I suggest you do the same." I never thought I could be so definitive without anger. Tiffany left the divorce papers and a handwritten note begging for reconciliation. That night, after Lily was asleep, I reviewed the documents. Everything was in order. My lawyer had ensured my daughter would be protected, that Tiffany would have visitation rights but never control, that our future was secure. I signed where indicated, then noticed Tiffany's desperate note again. Without opening it, I fed it into the shredder. Some messages don't require reading. The following morning, Lily and I visited a specialty garden store an hour away. We selected a custom-made gnome that resembled the two of us holding hands. "Where should we put it?" Lily asked as we returned home. "Right in the center," I decided, "the heart of our collection." As we placed it carefully among the others, I realized something profound had shifted. The gnomes were no longer weapons of revenge. They had become symbols of our resilience, our victory, our new life together. I had transformed from avenger to builder. Chad's real estate listing disappeared from all websites. According to Mrs. Abernathy's sources, he had moved to Arizona to start over. Tiffany had taken a job in the city, commuting 2 hours each way, to maintain her visitation schedule with Lily. My lawyer delivered the final divorce papers, now signed by a judge. "Congratulations," he said. "You're officially free." I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just a quiet certainty that justice had been served. That evening, as Lily and I watered our gnome garden together, she asked the question I'd been expecting. "Daddy, do you still love Mommy?" I considered my answer carefully. The truth mattered, but so did her emotional well-being. "I love the memories we made together," I said finally. "And I'm grateful for her greatest gift to me." "What's that?" "You," I smiled, tousling her hair. "The best part of both of us." I never expected emotional clarity to be the final victory. Later that night, I sat on my porch looking out at our gnome collection, illuminated by subtle landscaping lights. My unlikely army, my partners in justice, the instruments of my most meticulously executed plan. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, changed forever by one man's refusal to be dismissed. My phone buzzed with a text notification. "Tiffany again. I understand now. I won't ask again. Thank you for being an amazing father to Lily." I didn't reply. Some acknowledgments don't require response. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Co-parenting, community involvement, building a life that defined success on my terms, not society's. But tonight, I savored the quiet victory of reclaimed dignity, of a father who had protected his daughter, of a man who had faced humiliation and transformed it into power. The final gnome, the one that resembled Lily and me, seemed to smile a little wider in the moonlight. 1 year after my first gnome took its position on the battlefield of my front lawn, I stood watching the new family move into Chad's former McMansion, a young couple with twins. The husband waved enthusiastically when he spotted me. "You must be Frank. The neighbors told us all about the gnomes. My kids love them already." I returned his wave politely. "Welcome to Serenity Estates." The community had transformed under Mrs. Abernathy's leadership. The draconian rules had been replaced with common-sense guidelines. The color palette had expanded beyond 50 shades of beige. Most importantly, the atmosphere had shifted from suspicion to cooperation. I never imagined my revenge would create something beautiful. Mrs. Gonzalez hosted a block party to welcome the new neighbors. As honorary neighborhood ambassador, a title the community had created specifically for me, I brought my famous 7-layer dip and gnome-shaped cookies Lily had helped bake. "There he is, the man who saved Serenity Estates," Mrs. Abernathy announced as I arrived. Several neighbors applauded. I smiled uncomfortably. I just followed the rules. That had become something of a local joke, the man who had weaponized compliance into revolution. My relationship with Tiffany had settled into something resembling civility. She maintained her visitation schedule with Lily, though our daughter often called asking to come home early. The McMansion lifestyle had lost its shine for her as well. "Daddy, Chad moved back," Lily informed me one evening after returning from Tiffany's apartment. "He's staying with Mommy again." I felt a momentary twinge of something dark and cold. "Is that right?" "They were fighting about money. He said something about being blacklisted in the industry." I nodded, filing the information away. "How do you feel about that?" Lily shrugged. "I don't really care. He mostly stays in the guest room anyway." I never expected Chad's downfall to be so comprehensive. The next morning I received an email from my lawyer. Tiffany was requesting a modification to the custody agreement. She wanted more time with Lily, claiming changed circumstances and family reunification as justification. "Don't worry," my lawyer assured me. "The judge is unlikely to modify a working arrangement, especially given the history, but we should prepare a response." I spent that evening reviewing my meticulous records, Lily's therapy sessions following, the abandonment, Tiffany's missed visits, the school counselor's notes about adjustment issues. I had documented everything with the same precision I had once applied to HOA bylaws. Some habits prove useful across multiple battlefields. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the meantime, life in Serenity Estates continued its pleasant rhythm. My gnome collection had become something of a local landmark. Tour buses from the senior center sometimes drove by, the guide announcing, "And on your right is the famous gnome house that started the HOA revolution of 2024. My garden had expanded to include a koi pond and meditation area. The tire sculpture had been repaired and enhanced, now resembling an abstract tree with branches reaching toward Chad and Tiffany's former master bedroom window. I had transitioned from warrior to artist. 2 weeks before the custody hearing, I received an unexpected visitor. Chad himself standing on my porch looking considerably worse for wear. His designer clothes replaced by off-the-rack basics. His perfect tan faded. His confident posture diminished. "Frank," he nodded stiffly. "May I speak with you?" I checked my watch. "You're violating the restraining order." "It expired last month," he replied. I checked. I considered turning him away, but curiosity won out. 5 minutes. Lily will be home from school soon." Inside, Chad sat awkwardly on the edge of my couch, eyes darting toward the window where several gnomes seemed to be watching him accusingly. "I'm here about Tiffany's custody petition," he began. "That's between her and me," I replied evenly. Chad ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Look, she doesn't really want more custody. She just wants the child support reduced. We're struggling, financially." I watched him squirm, savoring each uncomfortable shift. "Again, that's between Tiffany and me. I can't get work in this state anymore," he continued, desperation creeping into his voice. "My arrest record shows up in every background check. My business partners bought me out at a fraction of the value. The house sold at a massive loss." I never realized how satisfying it would be to witness the complete collapse of his arrogance. "What exactly are you asking for, Chad?" He looked up, momentary hope flashing across his face. "If you'd agree to reduce the child support and drop the custody challenge, I could find work in Arizona. Make a fresh start. We both could." I leaned forward. "Let me be very clear. I didn't initiate this custody battle. Tiffany did. I have no interest in reducing support for my daughter, and your financial problems are entirely self-inflicted." His face hardened. "You destroyed my life over a woman." "No," I corrected. "I held you accountable for your actions. You mocked my home. You belittled me in front of my daughter. You handed me a rulebook and told me to learn about standards. I simply followed your advice." Chad stood abruptly. "This isn't over." I smiled thinly. "Actually, it is. You're 5. Minutes are up. After he left, I called my lawyer to report the conversation. "Sounds like they're getting desperate," she commented. "This strengthens our position considerably." Looking back, I recognized that moment as the beginning of the final phase. The day before the custody hearing, Tiffany requested an urgent meeting. We met at a neutral coffee shop, Lily safely at school. "I'm withdrawing the petition," she announced, without preamble. "And I have a proposition for you." I waited silently. "Chad and I are moving to Arizona next month. I'd like to modify the custody agreement to allow for longer visitation periods during school breaks, rather than regular weekends." I considered this. "Has Lily been consulted about this arrangement?" Tiffany looked down. "Not yet. I wanted to discuss it with you first." "What does Chad think of this plan?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "He supports whatever decision I make about Lily," she replied too quickly. I had become skilled at detecting lies. "Let me talk to Lily," I said finally. "If she's comfortable with it, I won't object to the modification." Relief washed over Tiffany's face. "Thank you, Frank. You've been more understanding than I deserve." I shrugged. "This isn't about what you deserve. It's about what's best for Lily." That evening, I had an honest conversation with my daughter. "Mommy and Chad want to move to Arizona. She wants to see you for longer visits during school breaks. How do you feel about that?" Lily considered this seriously. "Would I still live with you most of the time?" "Absolutely," I assured her. "This is your home." She nodded decisively. "Then it's okay. Maybe if Mommy's happier there, she'll be nicer when I visit." I marveled at her emotional intelligence. The custody modification was approved without controversy. Tiffany and Chad moved to Arizona the following month. The weekly video calls with Lily continued, but the constant tension of local proximity eased. 6 months later, I received a text message from Tiffany with a photo attached. Her and Chad standing in front of a modest house. "Our new start," the caption read. "Chad found work with a small developer. Not what he's used to, but it's something." I didn't respond. Some updates don't require acknowledgement. My life in Serenity Estates continued to evolve. The gnome collection became less about revenge and more about creativity. Lily and I added new characters based on neighborhood personalities. Mrs. Abernathy as a garden fairy, Mr. Gonzalez as a wise wizard, the twins from Chad's former house as mischievous elves. I had transformed from Avenger to community builder. One evening, as Lily and I added seasonal decorations to our gnome village, she asked the question I'd been expecting. "Daddy, are you glad Mommy left us?" I paused, wanting to give her the honest answer she deserved. "I'm not glad about how it happened," I said carefully, "but I'm grateful for where we are now. Sometimes painful things lead to beautiful changes." She nodded, seeming satisfied with this perspective. "Like our gnomes. They started because you were sad, but now they make everyone happy." "Exactly like that," I smiled, amazed by her insight. That night, after tucking Lily in, I stood in our front yard looking at the gnome collection illuminated by the full moon. My unlikely army, my path to justice, my unexpected legacy. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, forever changed by one man's refusal to be dismissed. I noticed the divorce papers sitting on my desk, along with Tiffany's latest letter requesting reconciliation. Without opening the envelope, I slipped it into the shredder. Some chapters deserve a definitive ending. As I turned off the lights, I caught a glimpse of our newest gnome edition, the custom-made one resembling Lily and me, holding hands. In the moonlight, their painted smiles seemed particularly knowing. "Daddy, do you still love Mommy?" Lily had asked earlier that evening as I tucked her in. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love the life she gave me," then turned off the light and walked past the window, where 15 gnomes stood guard against the darkness, their painted smiles shining like beacons of a battle gloriously won.